Welcome back to MLB Handicapping 2.0. Steve Merril along with Ralph Michaels, WagerTalk.com, and this is the midseason report. The last day of June as we record this video, heading into July, and it's going to have a good shelf life. If you didn't catch it on the first or second day of July, no worries. We've got some content and some information you can use for several more weeks during the baseball season. In fact, some info you can use for the rest of the season as well. We've got 4 different charts on this video, and be sure to check back on a weekly, bi-weekly basis. We got the All-Star break coming up in a week, so check back right after the All-Star break for the next edition of MLB Handicapping 2.0 right here on WagerTalk TV with myself, Steve Merril, and the human database, Stat Daddy, the pin. Let's bring him on, Ralph Michaels. And Ralph, this is our second edition of MLB 2.0. That's ironic, or is it a coincidence? But we actually had the first version last week, and if people missed that video, it's still archived on WagerTalk TV back on June 23rd, that Friday. And I recommend checking it out because we gave some information which we're going to update some day-night splits, which I thought was very revealing, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And you've updated it for the overall season as well from a home and away perspective, how teams do home, away, day, and night games. And it's actually pretty telling. But we also had a Game 2 angle last week, which you can use the rest of the season. And you're going to one-up it now with a Game 3 angle in just a moment. And then those of you joining us maybe a week into July, not too late to get some great information because we have 2 more bonus charts for the All-Star break on hot and cold teams, first half, second half of the season. Do you just blindly play them? Do they make you money? Do they lose you money? Some interesting information as well for the All-Star break coming up next week. So whether it's this week or next, first or second week of July, check out this video if you just found it. Make sure you hit subscribe and make sure you hit that bell for instant alerts for the next time we do MLB Handicapping 2.0 here on Wager Talk TV. Ralph, without further ado, welcome to the video. Welcome to the show. Let's get right into it. We had a we had a day-night split last week, which I thought was very interesting. Now you've broken it down a little further, home-road day-night split. Let's get right to it. What are we looking at here in this first chart?
Well, again, a couple people asked, are there a difference between day, night, home, and away? So obviously we're going to go to the database and show. Just FYI, this database, I didn't put it on there because this video will be up for 7 to 10 days. These are through games played Wednesday, June 28th. So on the left-hand side are the home games. You see the day and the night splits. On the right-hand side are the night games. Did I say that? Yeah, okay. So we have day games on the left. Let me pull up my right chart, Steve. So day games on the left, night games on the right. Now, the red with the white text means you're a bottom 4 as far as profit goes. The green highlight means you're top 4 as far as profit goes. So a quick glance, what I always do when I do my charts is let's take a look at day games. Is anyone top 4 or bottom 4 in both categories? Well, it's no surprise, Steve. We talked about the A's, who at home are 1-17 in day games. That is just remarkable. And on the road, they're 3-14. Take a look at the night games on the right-hand side. The Cardinals, bottom 4, both at home and on the road, winning under 38.1% of their night games, both at home and on the road. And one that surprised me, it really shouldn't, as hot as they were. They made a nice run. If you scroll down to the Reds are the only team that have a top 4 in both home and away categories, either day or night. They're 68.2% in home night games, and they're 54.2% in away night games, but you still see a solid profit of 5.4 units as their average line in that respect was a dog. So it gives you some situations to look for. There are some teams that clearly have day game and nighttime dichotomies, and there are some teams that are pretty much playing equal either way. So this is just one more step to help you in your handicapping process.
Yeah, and Ralph, my initial thought last week, is that I don't really look at home or day games. Night or road games, home day. I don't really worry about the day-night split. But then when you put up the chart last week when we did the first edition of this video, MLB Handicapping 2.0, the one thing that jumped out to me was that the really bad teams like the A's were much worse in the day games than the night games. Whereas like probably the biggest overachiever this season has been the Texas Rangers, much better in day games than night games. And some of the better teams fit that same mold. In fact, if you look at the Braves here, I'd say the Braves have maybe been as good as anybody this season. Very good in day road games. And they've been good, but they've actually been a money loser in night road games. Overall, this is a team that's probably been as good as the Rangers this year. So the Reds are very interesting because if that premise holds up, and once again, it's just an initial premise, but the premise once again is that good teams do better in day games than bad teams, then the Reds are very interesting because they've done better in night games. And even though they went on that 12-game win streak, they still had a negative run differential for the season, still barely in first place in that bad Central Division. So maybe, Ralph, that's a little bit of an indicator that the Reds are a phony favorite and due to regress. But yeah, it's amazing to me how bad the bad teams are in day games, whereas the A's 9-13 at home at night, 1-17, like you said, in home during the day. And once again, recap why you think that might be, Ralph. I thought you had a pretty good theory last week of why good teams do better in the day games.
Well, you mentioned the Reds, Steve. Look at the Reds, 6-13. 31.6% in home day games.
Right.
You know, I broke it down and I didn't really have an answer that I am positive of. But again, watching the Guardians, being a hometown Cleveland guy, I watch a lot of Guardians games. And I know they rest Naylor and they rest Ramirez in those day games at home before you go on a road trip to give them an extra day. So, you know, one of my thoughts was when you have a superstar, better teams have better superstars than crappy teams have superstars. So if you have a couple guys and the Indians are resting those guys, it's a bigger loss for them because, again, I know I probably don't remember ever betting the Guardians without Ramirez in the lineup. I mean, it's almost like Judge for the Yankees. When he's out of the lineup, the Indians are just a completely different team, be it if he's hurt or be if he's rested. You know, teams have certain go-to guys that just change the dynamic of the whole team. They get on base, their enthusiasm, the way the team rallies around them. So, you know, again, it's nothing that's proven. There's nothing data that I can say, but just being a Guardians fan, when Ramirez isn't in the lineup, I won't play them, even if they are the better team.
Yeah, once again, I mean, if you look at the 5 best teams run differential-wise this year, I mentioned the Rangers, I mentioned the Braves, the Rays were the only other triple-digit run differential team as we head into July. Dodgers and Astros are up over 60 like net runs. Astros, Dodgers, nothing crazy on the chart, but then again, they're very public. You can make an argument they're probably going to be a money burner anywhere right now. They're overpriced. But the Rays, 17-5 at home and away, day games. So they've been pretty good both ways. But once again, Rangers and Braves definitely have been better at the day than night, and those bad teams like the A's better at night than day. And I think that makes sense, Rob. My first thought was that day games are random. That would actually help the inferior team. But you're right. If you're both sitting a superstar and you've got less of them, it's a bigger loss for that bad team. And that's obviously what the numbers are showing, at least here in 2022. Viewers, chime in below in the comments. Let us know your thoughts why this might be, if you put any credence into it. You know, once again, we're presenting the data. Sometimes it lies to you. Sometimes it points you in the right direction. I think there's a little something here. 1-17 at home day games for the Oakland A's is pretty hard to ignore, even as bad as they are. That's pretty bad. All right, Ralph, we're going to get to some future data for after the All-Star break. But while we're in the first week of July here for this weekend's viewers, let's look at one more chart, and we'll pull up our next one, which we're going to focus on. And this one is interesting as well. You know, we talked last week about game number 2 of a series when they lose as a home favorite or lose as a favorite at game 1. Go back and check out that episode if you missed it on June 23rd here on WagerTalk TV. But now we're going to take it a step further. Let's look at a game number 3 angle, Ralph. And this goes all the way back to all series since 2019.
It does. And this is game 3 of a series. So if you see the situation on the left-hand side, I use the shortcuts for the database, but I'm pretty sure you can figure them out. Top situation, a previous win as a home favorite, and a previous win as a home favorite. So you won game 2 and you won game 1 as a home favorite. You're on the negative side. When you win those first 2 games, you're going for the sweep. Again, you still are winning 60.1% of the time, but the average line is minus $1.80. So you're down 26 units. And the important is the ROI because of the time frame here. The ROI really shrinks it into without looking at the record, without looking at the average line, it is the one number that quantifies all the data we're putting together in baseball, minus 2.6. So not a horrific record, but a negative record. You win game one as a home dog, you win game two as a home dog. You've only won 43% of the games, but with an average line of over a plus $1.30, you see the ROI is 0.00 something. So it is break even. But I have played this, and I've talked to Dave Koken about it. He likes playing this. If you lose game one as a home favorite, you lose game two as a home favorite, you have been positive. You're 68%, an average line of minus $1.54. You're plus 13.3%. If you lose game one and two as a home dog, you're minus 4.4%. So the only positive situation for game three is off back-to-back losses as a home favorite. And Steve, I just wanted to throw in the bottom. What happens if game one and game two of the series both go over? What happens if game one or game two of the series both go under? Well, the contradictory thing happens in game three. If both of the first two have gone over, those games have gone under 52.5% of the time. When both game one and game two have gone under, they've gone over 53% of the time. So I don't think anything on this chart is going to shock you, Steve, does it?
Well, I think that back-to-back losses as a home favorite are pretty profitable in that third game, like you said, and Dave Koken has talked about as well. I mean, that's jumps out to me. And what really jumps out to me, Ralph, is because I know, there's I don't know if it's still out there, but back in the day, 10, 20 years ago, there was that system, that baseball system going around on the internet that you could purchase for $49.99. And it would be basically just a martingale approach to when teams lost the first two. You play like a $2 thing one and then martingale it to game two. But it just shows, don't do that. Just sit back and wait for those rare times. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen where the team loses the first two because you've got an edge in game three and you can go ahead and just play it straight up. 13.5% return on investment since 2019. That's less than 4 baseball seasons. That's not a bad return. And it's also interesting how the betting markets do their job. Look at the difference between the average line, like you said, minus 180 versus minus 155, basically. And then same thing with the home dogs off back-to-back wins or losses. Home dogs off back to, game three off back-to-back, that line's almost 14 cents higher than a home dog that's won back-to-back games. So the betting markets make the adjustment, and same thing with those over-under lines. It might not seem like a big difference, but 8.8 versus 8.6. So once again, 2 unders, the line's a little bit lower in game three. Yet you've still made a little bit of money on the under. You have not made money, though, trying to fade back-to-back overs. And I think that makes sense, Ralph, because I'm a big proponent of offensive momentum, both good and bad. And I know Teddy Covers talks about this as well. He loves to ride over streaks before the bookmakers and the odds makers catch on. And you can have an under or two, right, when an ace starter pitcher for one team shows up or a guy just shuts down the opponents. But you have the same players in the offensive lineup day in and day out for the most part. And when they're seeing the ball well and they're going through a nice run, you can get several overs even against quality pitchers. So I think it makes sense that you do not want to fade hot over teams even after back-to-back overs. Whereas if you go the opposite way on the unders, you actually make a little bit of money. We just looked at some actionable info here for week 1 of July, but now we're going to get to some mid-season stuff because actually we already crossed over the halfway point this week. Most teams have now played around 81 games. We've got another week until the All-Star break on July 10th, but we thought it'd be interesting to look at how teams do going forward July 1st on when they've gotten off to a really good or a really bad start in general. And this is something we might update in a few weeks. So once again, hit subscribe and hit that bell for instant alerts for the next video, the next MLB Handicapping 2.0 video here in mid-July. And quick reminder, if you are joining us here the first week of July, don't forget to check out WagerTalk.com. And don't forget to wish America a happy birthday. It's America's birthday, July 4th. And in honor of America's birthday, we always do birthday specials at WagerTalk.com. So why not do one for the entire country and the entire website? Even the Canadians. This works on even the Canadians. Andrew McGinnis, Carmine, Prez, because I think Canada Day is July 1st. They always have to one-up us. But you're getting 7 days all sports for just $69, and there's no promo code needed. It's quite simple. You can use it. Steve Merril, Ralph Michaels, any of those Canadians, even Tokyo Brandon gets 7 days for just $69. It's an international special, the July 4th special, and you get it this week at WagerTalk.com. All sports is normally, as Ralph knows, $99. It's just $69 right now. No promo code needed, and that includes all those rare and powerful 5% best bets as well. So that's the first week of July, Ralph. But for the viewers that are joining in here the second week of July during the All-Star break, we're going to keep this video up so we get some extra views, because the more views we get, the more charts we show on future episodes. Let's talk about really good or bad teams. And I wanted to make it simple. So I asked Ralph, let's say above 60%, below 40%. I think that's a pretty good barometer, because usually the 2 or 3 worst teams in baseball lose more than, win only about 40% or less. Almost every team wins about 40, and almost every team wins only 60% or less. There's a couple outliers. So halfway through the season, beginning of July, Ralph, these are teams over the last, I guess, what was it, maybe since 2019 here, the last 4 years or so, that have gotten off to really good or really bad starts, plus 60%, sub 40%. And I see a lot of red on those bad teams going forward, Ralph, and a lot of black on the good teams. So maybe a fade the public mentality here does not work.
Well, Steve, let's explain the chart. The top chart in green means teams at the All-Star break had a win percentage of 50% or higher. And you see they are ranked by win percentage, that third column. I did not include 2020, the COVID year. So this goes back 4 years with the exclusion of 2020. You see the best team in baseball over the last 4 years at the All-Star break was last year's Yankees. They had a win percentage of 69.6. On the flip side, the worst teams in the last 3 years, last 3 seasons that I used, the worst team was the 2021 Arizona Diamondbacks with a win percentage of 28.3. So when we looked at the data, we then took what teams were the second half of the year. Now, you'll see some teams have played 84 or 85 games. Because the All-Star break was a different day each year, I had to use July 1st. So that's why you see a few more games than half the season in the record. But you still see what those teams done. The Yankees had a great start in 2022, and they played basically 500 ball, yet they were a minus 168.5 average favorite. You see they were minus 21.9 units. That was the second worst out of every team in every situation on this chart. But the other next 6 teams that had very good starts to the season, while their percentage may not have been as high, you see they still all finished on the plus side. The biggest thing that stands out, Steve, you and I talked about it before the show, right in the middle there, the 2021 San Francisco Giants, second half of the season, they won 68.7 games, and people still didn't have a lot of faith in them. So the average line was minus 144. Hence, they were plus 24 units and plus a 19.8 return on investment. But let's take a look at the bottom. When you look at those bottom teams that had a win percentage under 4, do they turn it around in the second half? Not at all. Only 3 teams showed a profit. Last year's Oakland A's, the 2019 Toronto Blue Jays, and the 2022 Chicago Cubs finished with positive money. And look at those return on investments. They're pretty sizable. Minus 8.8, minus 19.6, minus 34.6, minus 7.3, minus 10. So the upper chart doesn't show us much that is bettable worthy, I don't think. But the bottom chart clearly says, well, these teams have sucked. They're due to turn it around. Don't fall into that due system.
Yeah, and the magic number, the more I think about it, Ralph, maybe should have been 61.5% and 38%. The reason I say that is because 100 wins is really the parameter people think of as a great baseball season, right? Or 100 losses is a really bad season. 100 losses is a little over 38%. 100 wins is about 61.7. So isn't it ironic if you look at that top chart there, basically all the teams that were 62% or higher, in fact, if you go to 62.9, 7 of the 8 made money going forward. So you did not want to fade those eventual 100 win teams, perhaps. And same thing with the bottom feeders, right? Like you said, I mean, the worst of the worst were the worst. It's not like, oh, the more bad they are, the more they're going to adjust the line and we'll get some value fading that team. It was the exact opposite. You lost money on every one of those 6 bad teams over the last 4 years. So going forward, we are doing this video once again on July 30th, heading into July 1st. And obviously, we'll have about another week until the All-Star break. But if you're looking at the standings right now on the last day of June, going into that final night of June, there are only 4 teams, I believe, in baseball right now above 60%. Only one in the National League, the Atlanta Braves, 66.5%. Of course, the Devil Rays also 66.7%. The Tampa Bay Rays, they got off to that red hot start. My Texas Rangers, my play-on team this year, 60.5%. And boy, I would not have known the other one if you'd asked me off the top of my head. But my former Baltimore Orioles, until my former Washington Nationals became my local team, Orioles 60.8. And as you know, Ralph, they've been the best moneymaker in baseball for 2+ years now. So that's an example of a team you've not wanted to fade when everyone kept thinking they're going to come back down to earth. On the flip side, I'll quickly look at the worst teams in baseball this year. In fact, right now in the American League, there are only 2 teams below 43%. And they're 2 of the worst teams in the history of baseball. The Kansas City Royals, 28.5%. And Ralph's future Las Vegas Athletics, 25.3%. And they're both on it. By the way, the A's are on a pace to maybe lose more than 119 games. That's the most ever lost in a 162-game season. That was Johnny Detroit's Tigers in 2003. Man, we have a lot of associations with some good and bad teams on this chart. And then finally, in the National League, we don't have as many bad teams maybe as the A's and Royals. In fact, there's only one team below 40%. That's actually the Colorado Rockies, 38.5%. So we'll revisit this down the road. But once again, if history is any indicator, do not look for the Rockies, Royals, or A's to get any better or make you money. Don't take the contrarian approach of those bad teams. And don't necessarily look to fade the Rays, Orioles, Rangers, or Braves. Ralph, any of that jumps out to you as strange or surprising?
No, I think it's just, it's a great analysis just talking through those teams. But I went to the database, Steve. So I'm going to make you take a guess now that you talked about the Orioles. And it's not the Orioles. I can tell you this. Since the start of the 2021 season, so 1921, 2021, 2022, and this 2023 season, okay? Who is the best team in baseball? And we talked about it earlier in a different segment. Profit, not record-wise, profit-wise. They had a spectacular year a couple years. Moneyline profit since the start of the 2021 season.
Well, I mean, I don't know the answer. I'm not going to cheat and look. I mean, we just talked about what a moneymaker the Giants were, and then you and I, before the show, were talking about how the Mariners but the Mariners in 2021, for the viewers that weren't in our pregame discussion, the Mariners had a really good first half in 2021 at 51%, and then they crushed it even more in the second half. But yeah, that Giants record, like you said, was kind of an outlier a couple years ago.
The Giants are up. Now, look at this. This is 3 years. So this shows you the parity in baseball. The best team in baseball since the start of the 2021 season is the Giants. They're plus only 30 units. That's 30 units in 2.5 years. The Rays are plus 27.8. The Braves are plus 25.8. Those are the top 3. The worst team, it's not even close. The San Diego Padres are minus 73.8 units. That's minus 12% ROI. With the money they put into that program, that's absolutely amazing since the start of the 2021 season.
Yeah, but Ralph, I'll take it a step further. We talked about the Giants in the pregame show here that was exclusively for you, me, and our producer, Eric. But the Giants were 21 and then plus 24 more units the second half of 2021. So that's like almost 46 units, which means they were negative the other 2 seasons, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. That is the 2.5-year combination of those teams. So you are exactly right. How about this for a shock? The 4th most profitable team since the start of the 2021 season, the Detroit Tigers. They've gone 178 and 227. They've only won 44% of their games, but with an average line of 143, they're plus 18.8 units. So again, that just shows the parity and the up and down of the seasons and how there are no New England Patriot teams in baseball because of the minus 200, minus 300 lines that those great teams are having to lay.
No, that would have been one of my 5 last guesses, probably, if I had to guess the Detroit Tigers. So we would have been here for a while. I'm glad you didn't make me guess on that one. And isn't it ironic, once again, that the markets have finally corrected on Johnny Detroit's hapless Detroit Tigers since 2003's 119-loss season? It only took 2 decades for them to become profitable again. But yeah, you talked about ROI, return on investment. That's what you have to look at in baseball because it's not minus 110 every game like a point spread or an over-under. Whereas the over-unders in baseball, maybe they're minus 120, but usually they're in that range of minus 110 to minus 120 before the line moves. So I do like the over-under research. It's a little more like football and basketball talk. And hopefully Ralph and I will have some football videos here in a month or so in the near future here. So another reason, hit subscribe and hit that bell for instant alerts whenever we do these handicapping 2.0, whether it's MLB, college football, maybe NFL, college or pro basketball. You'll be the first to know. You can watch and get some actionable info. And once again, don't forget, if you're joining us this first week of July, the July 4th special is still going right now. 7 days for just $69 at WagerTalk.com. All sports, including 5% best bets from any and all capper you want. Multiple uses. Use it for multiple cappers. Lock in different sports, different handicapping styles, and have a great start to July with that 7 days for $69. WagerTalk.com. If you're joining us a little later here at the All-Star break, not too late to get some actionable info for the second half of the season. We just looked at, should we fade or play good or bad teams in the second half? Red hot and ice cold teams do not turn things around. That was the basic takeaway over the last 4 years on that chart. So let's look at one more chart, though, Ralph. And this one has a good little shelf life here for a couple weeks. But what about the first game after the All-Star break when they come back here in a couple weeks? All-Star game is Tuesday, July 11th. If I'm not mistaken, they probably start up that Thursday, July 13th. But I'll double check right now as you break down this chart.
Well, Steve, those that watch Wager Talk, this shouldn't surprise anyone. If you watched my son a few weeks ago, he talked about teams returning from long road trips, coming home with rest. What happens when you're at home? You spend family time, you take care of business, you pay your bills, you're out of a routine. Well, what happens after the All-Star break? You've been home from multiple games. Perhaps you go on vacation, whatever you do. But the day before, when you are at home, you are still not in your routine. Whereas a road team, you have your meetings, you are at the stadium, you take the bus to the airport, you get on a plane, you are staying at a hotel, you are back in your normal routine to play. So this is only the first game after the All-Star break. I went back since 2016. Take a look at the numbers. Home teams, average line of minus 121, and they've only won 43%, minus 15.08 ROI. But look at the difference. Home favorites are just below 500. Home dogs, which mean you are the worst team, you're out of your routine, you come to the ballpark, you're a home dog. Yes, the sample size isn't huge, but again, I went back since 2016. Home dogs 8-24, minus 42.4 return on investment. And on the very bottom, if you're at home and you won your game previous to the All-Star break, you are only 13-26, an average line of minus $1.20, minus 32.5% ROI. So Teddy and I have talked about it. Christmas time at home's the same thing. Home NBA teams at Christmas, I look to fade those home teams. You're out of your routine and you're spending family time. The road team, all business. This certainly holds true in this situation as well.
Yeah, and you get the extra day off like they've started doing in recent years. So no games on Thursday, which means every team, all 30 teams, 15 games on Friday, July the 14th when they return. They're all nighttime games as well. And I think we can, even though we're looking a couple weeks ahead here, we're going to definitely have some home dogs. The Oakland A's are at home against Minnesota that night. The Kansas City Royals are at home against Tampa, one of the best teams against one of the worst teams. That's almost certain to be a home dog. And also the one of the four worst teams we talked about earlier, Colorado Rockies are at home against the Yankees. The Yankees should be a road favorite most likely in that game as well. So it looks like there's at least three right there, three of the worst teams in baseball, who we just mentioned with the previous charts. You should not look to back. Will also probably be in a negative role, being a home dog off the full week off here, or almost a full week off. So something to keep an eye on, some great actionable info for the first day back on Friday, July 14th after the All-Star break, which comes up in a week or so. Once again, thank you to everybody for joining us here on this show, MLB Handicapping 2.0. If you're joining us in the first week, $69 gets 7 days of Ralph Michaels, $69 gets 7 days of myself, Steve Merril, and every other capper at WagerTalk.com. No promo code needed. It's the July 4th special. Happy birthday, America. Make some money betting on America's pastime, Major League Baseball, here over the next week. And then don't forget the All-Star break is on July 10th, the All-Star game July 11th, and then the games start again July 14th. So check out those last couple charts we just talked about if you're joining us later in the week in July for some actionable info as well as we head into the second half of the baseball season. Ralph, thank you for joining me as always. And once again, hit subscribe, hit that bell for instant alerts for the next time Ralph Michaels and myself, Steve Merril, do a 2.0 handicapping video, probably a little bit more MLB, and then maybe some fun around the corner. Thumbs up if you found it useful. And most importantly, leave us some comments below. We're open to suggestions. Let us know what you'd like to see researched. And maybe we can dig up some more content and some more great charts. And most importantly, some profitable systems, trends, and angles for you to use in the upcoming seasons in baseball and other sports as well. So like, comment below, hit subscribe, and check out WagerTalk TV on a daily basis for great content. These shows are archived 24/7. And check out WagerTalk.com as well for best bets and free plays. Don't forget about the free plays posted daily at WagerTalk. Ralph, thank you. Great show as always. Enjoy the All-Star break, and we'll chat again soon in a couple weeks right here on WagerTalk TV.